بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We continue our study of different theories about normative ethics, and inshallah then we will talk about the difference between applied ethics and ethical theory, and then inshallah after that we will have a discussion about some of the major ideas about the foundations of ethics. As you remember, we said there are three major views about what makes an action right or wrong, what makes an action good or bad, what makes moral obligation. One view was teleological view, and this is the view which justifies goodness of the action or badness of the action based on the outcomes, on the results, on the consequences, on the ends. The second major view was deontological view, which says that a moral action or a good action or a right action is the one which is done out of a moral sense of duty, a moral sense of obligation. There are categorical imperatives, as Kant used to say, awamir qat'i, categorical imperatives in ethics, and you must do them regardless the consequences. For example, you have to tell the truth. This is a moral obligation. It can be sometimes useful, sometimes harmful, sometimes neutral, but it doesn't make difference. And the third was virtue ethics, which emphasizes more on virtues instead of actions. And then a moral action is the one which is suitable or compatible with a virtue or more than one virtue. So, we inshallah little by little mention different dimensions of Islamic theory of ethics. But so far, we say that for us, it is certainly important to consider outcomes and consequences, because we don't believe in divine command theory or its version in Islam, similar counterpart in Islam, which is the idea of the Ash'arites. As you know, the Ash'arites had the idea that there is no objective ground for moral goodness and badness. They are in themselves equal. When God commands to do something, it becomes good, it becomes just. Al-hasanu ma hassanahu ash-shari', al-qabihu ma qabbahahu ash-shari'. So if shari', the lawmaker, says something is good, it becomes good. For example, if he says you should keep your promise then it becomes good. But he could have said, you don't need to keep your promises. Then it was all right not to keep your promises. If he wants to send pious people to hell, it's possible. He said he doesn't do that. But there is nothing in reality that would force God, because they thought God is above moral obligations, but they didn't understand how to articulate it. So they ended up with very unpleasant consequences. They said God is above all moral obligations, so he can do everything. It's like someone saying God is above logic. God is above mathematics. Yes, it is true, God is above everything. But what do you mean by God is above logic? So does it mean that God can make contradictory things possible? Or for example, God can make 2 + 2 5? It's not something about power of God or weakness of God. If we say there are realities, there are facts that are there, and power of God belongs to the things which are there, which are possible, not to things which are impossible. And you should not make the will of God arbitrary, to say God just decides and tells us what to do, what not to do. There is no change, there is no reality, they are equal. No. In any case, we believe that morality is based on realities, is based on what we call al-husn wal-qubh al-dhdhaatiyan, intrinsic goodness and badness. And because they are real, so they are also rational. Al-husn wal-qubh al-dhdhaatiyan, and therefore al-husn wal-qubh al-aqliyan, because there is objective ground, so our intellect can also try to understand. But if you say al-husn wal-qubh are not real, then aql also cannot understand, and you have to take it from a source, from an authority. So it becomes a king, a parliament, or for example, God, according to some believers. So, according to our view, for actions, certainly what makes them good or bad is based on reality. The difference between good action and bad action, between just action and unjust action, the difference is real. Whether we believe in religion or not, the difference is there. You know, I normally mention this example from Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura, when he said, "Illam yakun lakum din wa kuntum la takhafun al-ma'at fakunu ahraran fi dunyakum." If you don't believe in faith, you have no faith, you have no fear of the hereafter, at least be noble in your worldly life. So, a noble person, even if he has no faith, would not attack women and children who are not fighting you, who are not able to defend themselves. So you see, there is a reality for ethics, and everyone is expected to observe that. You don't need to be a Muslim or Christian to understand and to respect any human being. Actually, we say that if we didn't have this kind of independent, rational understanding, we were not even able to prove the truth of religion. This is why in the books of Kalam, our ulama say if there is no husn qubh aqli, there is no also husn qubh shar'i. Because without having some, at least basic, independent judgments of aql about morality, we cannot prove religion. For example, you must have studied this in ilm kalam. For example, if someone brings a miracle, how do you prove that he cannot be a liar? What is wrong if God gives miraculous power to a liar, to someone who wants to cheat? You cannot say, no, in the Quran, in the Bible, God says he's not, helping the liars, because we are still to prove that there is such a book sent by God. We have to still verify the claim of this prophet. So how can we establish from an extraordinary act, خارق العادة, an extraordinary act that is produced by a person who claims to be prophet, how can we establish from that he is actually sent by God as a mission? There is only one way, and that is to say that God, the absolute God, the benevolent, would not deceive people by giving a liar an extraordinary power. Therefore, if you remember, when we talk about mu'jiza, miracle, there is a technical condition there. We say it has to be accompanied by claim. If someone doesn't claim that he is a prophet, and he does an extraordinary act, and there is challenge, there is tahaddi, still it's not a mu'jiza. But if he claims to be the prophet, then God should stop him if he's not honest. Because this would be leading to deception of people, misguidance of people. In any case, we believe that morality is based on realities. It has truth value, and we have to discern. We have to discern, tashkhis dadan. We are not creating morality, and we are not receiving all of it from an authority. There are real grounds for morality, and we have to discern. In the same way that you discern other sciences. Of course, some are empirical sciences, some are sciences which are intellectual, but all of them have realities. What also helps here is what in ilm al-usul we have very clearly established, especially in the school of Ahlul Bayt, that al-awamir wal-nawahi tabi'atun lil-masalih wal-mafasid al-waqi'iyya. All the commands and prohibitions. This is about the legal commands and prohibitions, but it is the case also about moral. Because if for the legal ones you need real interest and harm, for morality it will be more obvious. Because in law there is a chance that people make decisions based on contract, based on an authority, based on consensus, and maybe they are not very careful about the realities. Although this is not our view, but in some part of the world. But if, even in law, you need real interest and harm, then you can imagine in morality it would be more obvious. We have either maslahah, interest to observe, or mafsada, harm to avoid. And I think did I tell you about maslahat mulzame and ghayr mulzame? Yes. So we said depending on the degree and intensity of this interest and harm, it becomes obligatory, or it becomes recommended, or it becomes prohibited, or disliked, or neutral. I have seen some people writing some papers on morality, and even some people, giving lectures, and they say Islamic understanding of ethics is deontological, not teleological. I am very surprised, because for us, as I said, it's very clear that everything is based on reality. And even moral commands, moral instructions derive their validity from realities. If we say, be kind to your parents, keep your promises, not to be jealous, not to be selfish, these are commands and prohibitions, but they are based on realities. It's not that you can say everything you like. In logic, we say there is a difference between a statement, khabar, and insha. Insha does not have truth value. You cannot describe it with true or false. لا يتصف بالصدق والكذب. If someone says, give me money, you cannot say this is true or false. But إخبار يتصف بالصدق والكذب can be described as true or false. But inshallah we will talk about it later, that in Islamic understanding, all the insha'at, whether they are amr or nahy or ta'ajjub, whatever, have their origins in realities. We can say salli, which is command, or we can say as-salatu tanha an al-fahsha'i wal-munkar, or as-salatu wajibatun, or as-salatu hasanatun. You can say it in different ways, and each of them has its own function. When you say it as a statement or as a command, it has different functions. There is a reason, but it doesn't change the reality between salat and the benefits that we are taking from salat. So when Allah says sallu or aqimus salah, this is not insha without basis. Therefore, inshallah, we will explain later when we will talk about insha and ikhbar, that all the insha'iyat are also based on realities. They are not just insha. But why God uses the language of insha sometimes? There is a beautiful point there that inshallah I will mention. So, I am not happy with this idea that in Islam we are deontologists. No, we are teleologists. For us, the outcomes are important, but what is important is sometimes we ourselves can understand the outcomes. This is a very important point. Once there was a discussion and I mentioned something, one of the great teachers of Hausa in field of philosophy said, this must be written by gold. Because some people were talking about how to discover maslaha and who can understand maslaha. And I said, certainly our ahkam, our laws are based on real maslaha. But sometimes it is left to us to calculate maslaha. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already made the calculation and informed us about the result. For example, salat is based on maslaha. But it's not up to me and you that for every condition we calculate and say, okay, today in the morning, salat has maslaha. But then next day we say, today it has no maslaha because there are problems. Or this year we fast, next year we don't fast. There are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the calculations and we have just to be obedient. But there are things that are left to us. They are very changeable. And one of the beauties of Islam is that we have both sets of rules. We have fixed rules. We have flexible rules. Flexible rules are those that we have to calculate based on facts, based on wisdom, through consultation, seeking advice of experts. But we have to calculate and see whether there is maslaha or not, whether then it would be necessary or not. But there are things that already are calculated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here we should not then bring our own calculations. Yes, if something would be in conflict with another law of Sharia which overrides this, then it can stop that rule, not based on our own calculation of the first rule, based on the fact that the other rule is more important in Sharia and overrides. In that one, if it is left to us to decide, then we can bring our own calculation. So, for example, maybe I have to say my salat in all circumstances, but if it's a matter of saving an innocent life who is now drowning and needs my help to rescue him, then I have to give priority to saving that life over my salat. This is not based on my calculation of the value of salat. Salat is necessary and I don't question it. But I have another rule that God says you have to save innocent life, and He has made the calculation that saving innocent life is the most important thing. Then that would override this. In any case, what is important is we are always concerned about facts, about realities, about real interest and harm, real maslaha and mafsada. So, we are teleologists, but we have to observe 2-3 points. One is that at the same time that we are teleologists, for us intention is very important. Most of teleologists, they don't bother about intention. Why? This is a very important point. They are not bothering about intention because they have defined as their end something that doesn't need certain type of intention. For example, please listen carefully. If we say the aim of our morality is to reach welfare, then it doesn't matter how someone leads us towards welfare. You just need best welfare. Doesn't need certain type of intention. But if you say our aim is human perfection or nearness to God, then this aim, this end needs certain intention. Without sincere and pure intention, you cannot become perfect. Because if you bring your actions to show off, this would not lead to perfection or nearness to God. So, at the same time that we are teleologists, we are also very much concerned about intention. Because our aim is such that would not be achieved unless you have good intention. You must have attention and good intention. If you do it without attention, it's not enough. If you do it with bad intention, it's not enough, and maybe even sometimes it's harmful. It takes you away. Another point. We are teleologists. But we said there is a question. What should be our aim? This is something that, inshallah, we will discuss. What is the aim of Islamic ethics? Inshallah, we will explain that we can discuss this in two ways, which are supplementary. But I don't want to discuss it now, but I just give it a little bit of hint so that when the time comes, you have some background. It's like two sides of the same coin. Either nearness to God or human perfection. And it is interesting that in Islam, human development and perfection, and inshallah I will explain what is perfection, because real perfection is only for God. But when we say insan kamil, what does it mean? Inshallah I will explain what does it mean. It means someone is complete, not perfect. Is complete in development of humanity. Inshallah we will talk about it. What is interesting is that in Islam there is no conflict between developing our human side and being a servant of God, being a believer, moving towards God. You don't need to deny your humanity. Indeed, the closer you are to God, the more complete you are in humanity. This is why in our literature, Adam shodan means to make success in your moral journey. What is Adam? What is insan here? It doesn't mean insan in its biological sense. It means insan in its true sense, which means someone who exhibits human characteristics. Those characteristics can only be found in human beings. Inshallah, we will talk about it later. So, the aim of Islamic ethics is nearness to God, and at the same time, you can say completion or perfection of humanity in us. And these two come hand in hand. They are two sides of the same coin. Point 3. Who should be the beneficiary? We said teleologists are 3: egoist, altruist, universalist. Which one is correct? This needs a long discussion. As far as I have seen, I like you also to study and share with me your ideas. As far as I have seen, normally those Muslim scholars who have discussed this issue, because sometimes maybe some people have not discussed this issue, but those who have discussed this issue normally talk about al-dhdhaat as the main drive, the main motive, or the only motive for our actions. For example, Ayatollah Misbah, who has discussed this issue in some of his works, he has this idea that everything we do is for al-dhdhaat. And even when we pray, when we fast, is for the sake of ourselves. We want to benefit. We want to get reward. We want to get heaven. We want to avoid going to hell. Even a mother who takes care of her child, these thinkers say, again, it is out of al-dhdhaat. Because this mother loves her child as part of herself and would not feel comfortable, would not feel happy if she neglects the child. If the child is crying, the mother would not enjoy sleeping. But when she looks after her child, it is true that sacrifices her sleep, but she gets another pleasure which is stronger for her. Even they say for people who become martyrs and sacrifice their life, they say still there is al-dhdhaat. They sacrifice their physical life in order to gain something better. So everything goes back to al-dhdhaat. Some of them, I had a discussion with one of the brothers we were both invited to Pashtuheshkar, and the topic was about khudgiravi and al-dhdhaat. So this brother had the idea that everything is al-dhdhaat, but in some of his writings he had the idea that we have also mystical worship, and maybe mystical worship is different. When someone worships God not in order to go to heaven, nor in order to avoid punishment of hell. بل وجدتك أهلا للعبادة فعبدتك. So he was saying this is exception. This is not al-dhdhaat, but everything else is al-dhdhaat. So as far as I have seen, but I am not claiming that there is no other view. So please go and find out, because we need to see. Maybe sometimes scholars, when they were discussing other issues, they have talked about this. As far as what I have seen, either they don't discuss this issue, or they emphasize on al-dhdhaat. And then they say there might be exception. Otherwise, love of mother, love of worshippers for God, everything is out of al-dhdhaat. So for them, then to be egoist is the only choice. Because unless you have an internal desire to do something, you will not do it. And for them, the main desire is al-dhdhaat. You want to benefit yourself, or you want to avoid harm. Jalbul manfa'ah or daf'ul zarar. Jalbul manfa'ah or daf'ul zarar. And this is because you want yourself, you want your interest, you don't want to suffer. My understanding is different. And inshallah, I should send you a link to something I wrote about this, or maybe you can find it, something about Mabani Akhlaq. It's in Farsi also published. I believe, because I have been thinking a lot about this for many years, and I was not convinced that everything is for al-dhdhaat. My idea is that we have to distinguish between two things. One is, we don't do anything unless we have a desire inside us which would be triggered, which would be activated by doing that thing, or even thinking about that thing. For example, if someone tells me, let's go somewhere, let's do this, let's not do this, the only reason for me doing something is that I should have some interest, some desires that this thing can satisfy. Otherwise, there are billions of things that we can do and we don't do. Billions of places that we can go and we don't go. You must be able to motivate me. And for being motivated, I should have some grounds inside me, some interests, some desires. If you touch upon them, you can motivate me, you can trigger me. This is acceptable, I accept that. But I don't understand, and I don't share with the majority, is that these are all based on al-dhdhaat. I think we have inside us different desires, different concerns. We have different concerns. Different things are interesting to us. One is everything which relates to our benefit and harm. So that is al-dhdhaat. But I believe human beings at the same time have concern for other things, even if they don't relate to them. For example, we have interest in beauty even if I'm not going to benefit from. We have interest in knowledge even if it doesn't benefit me. We have interest in pleasure of other human beings and creatures even if we are not going to see them or we are not going to gain them. If I see an animal is thirsty, for me as a human being, there is a genuine interest in quenching the thirst of that animal. I don't need to calculate. Is it going to benefit me if I give him water or not? Am I benefiting, therefore I give water, or I'm not going to benefit, then I don't give water? A mother has concern for her child as she has concern for herself. You don't need to say the concern for the child is only coming from the concern for herself. Yes, it can be many times like that, but it can be also independent. Therefore, a mother may not calculate even very quickly, because some people say, no, they do all the calculations, but very quickly. I say, even if it is done quickly, when you examine it, you take your time and examine, you should be able to find it. Even if something is irtikazi, you have to be able to find it out. If you ask 10 mothers why you wake up in the night to look after your child, please tell us exactly what goes in your mind at that moment. Do you think anyone would say, because I felt in this way I would be happier, or I would be suffering if my child is crying, so therefore in order to save myself from unhappiness or to gain pleasure I did this? No. It is part of the reality that they have concern for the child as they have concern for themselves. I think humanity has this potential that can have concern for other beings as we have concern for ourselves and for our children. And this is the only way we can be really Khalifatullah. Because to be Khalifatullah means that you have to have genuine, unselfish concern for other beings. If it is not genuine, it is not unselfish, then you cannot be Khalifatullah, because you want to use them. You don't want to benefit them, you want to just benefit from them. This is not going to work. So, we accept that there must be an interest in us, there must be a concern in us, but I have difficulty in accepting that the only interest and the only concern that we have is our own self. And we can only do things if we find it useful for ourselves. I accept that maybe 90% of our decisions is like this. But I don't accept it 100%. And I don't accept that it should be the case. I think the more you rise in your humanity, the more you resemble Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you can go away from consideration of your interest. But at the same time, I believe that if you do things with proper understanding, there is no conflict. If I do something for another person, at the same time it would be useful for me. You don't need to sacrifice in order to help others. When we do good to others, and ahsantum ahsantum la anfusikum. So when you help others, whether you want it or not, you are helping yourself. But it should not be your intention. It should not be your concern that I help them only because it is helping me. No, this is actually reducing the value of action. So, are we egoist? My answer is that in most of our actions, maybe we are egoist, but we can at the same time be altruist or universalist. Humanity has this potential that doesn't need to sacrifice the self for others or the others for the self. If you really help yourself, you are helping others, and if you really help others, you are helping yourself. Just you have to be going beyond temporary and short term interests. You have to look for long-term interest, because people who cheat, unfortunately, they only consider short-term interest, and when it's short-term interest, there is conflict. There is for example, limited opportunity. Either I have to take it or someone else, so there is conflict. But when you go beyond and you are able to look at things in the long term, there is no conflict. Not only there is no conflict, actually we help each other. If each of us win. If I help you to win, I win. But in the short term competitions, no. Either I have to win or you have to win. For example, there is a limited space near river. Either I make my house there or you make your house there. We have competition and one of us has to win. There is a job, we apply. Either I get the job or you get the job. There is competition. But when you go a little bit further and you think about human virtues or about nearness to God, then there is no competition in this sense. Yes, there is another competition in which we are all taking part as one team. I have explained this in some lectures, that there will be a competition, but this competition is different from dunya. So, we are teleologists, but a special type of teleologist. For us, intention is very important. For us, ourselves are very important. Others are also very important. Most of people, maybe they are driven by consideration of their own interests, so they are maybe egoist, but this doesn't need to be the case. And we have to rise to the level that we can see all different types of interests that we have are flourished. You are looking after yourself, you are looking after others, you are paying attention to the things which might not be beneficial to you directly. For example, you hear there's a special type of animal in another part of the world which is perishing. You become sad. Whether you are going to see that animal or not, whether you are going to benefit or not, it doesn't matter. You don't want something good by itself and on itself to stop. Okay. Now, let's leave this for sometime in future. Inshallah, we can go back and discuss the difference between ethical theory and applied ethics. How much time we have? Okay, so inshallah we can continue this in another session. So next time we will talk about applied ethics and what is the relation between what we have said so far and applied ethics, and then inshallah we will go on to different theories. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.